My name is Mia, and at 28, I never imagined I'd find myself in the position of holding everything together for my family. At this stage of life, most people are busy with their careers or trying to figure things out, but here I was, juggling my own challenges while also covering nearly everything my family needed. Mia, honey, the therapy bill for Jack came in. My mom's voice crackled over the phone last week. It was yet another conversation that had become too familiar over the past several months. I know you've already helped a lot, but... She trailed off as if apologizing. I sighed, scrolling through my banking app while balancing the phone on my shoulder. How much this time, Mom? The story of how we arrived here is simple, but living through it has been nothing short of exhausting. My brother Alex, who is 2 years older than me, had what Mom called a career setback a while ago. In reality, Alex had a breakdown when he didn't get the promotion he thought he deserved. Instead of handling it gracefully, he quit without warning, burning bridges and leaving his colleagues and boss dumbfounded. "I can't believe they picked Sarah over me," Alex had sobbed, his voice full of frustration. "I've worked there for years. Do you know how hard I tried?" Before we dive in, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below, letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. We're excited to connect with all of you, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more amazing content. Now back to the story. I sat in my small, rented apartment, still proud of it after moving out on my own, listening to Alex vent. I thought this would be a temporary phase, that he'd come around after a few weeks. But weeks turned into months, and it was clear he wasn't going to be able to move past it anytime soon. What should have been a few weeks of reflection turned into months of unemployment, with Alex applying only to specific jobs. Meanwhile, I found myself picking up the slack for the whole family, paying for my parents' bills, keeping the fridge stocked, and ensuring Alex could continue his therapy sessions. His therapy is really helping him. Mom would say as I transferred money to their account for Alex's therapy sessions, he's really starting to make progress. Progress? To me, all I saw was more of my paycheck disappearing, watching my brother sit at home, mindlessly browsing job listings while he waited for the perfect job to come along. Meanwhile, I worked overtime at my office job to cover for everyone. I rarely had time to breathe, let alone relax. One day, I looked at my parents' tired faces. The worry lines on Mom's face had deepened, and Dad's shoulders had become permanently slumped. I knew it was time for all of us to have something to look forward to, a break from the stress. I decided to plan a trip to Italy, just for the three of us to get away from everything. I spent weeks arranging every detail, the best hotel, private tours, and memorable experiences. I booked a wine tasting for Dad, who loved a good glass of red, and a cooking class for Mom, so she could experience authentic Italian cuisine. I even booked a boat ride along the canals for us, imagining the fun we'd have together. It was supposed to be our chance to forget all the stress, to create happy memories, and hopefully bring us closer. I imagined us strolling along the streets of Rome, enjoying the sights, sharing laughs over meals in quaint cafes, and seeing my parents finally relax and enjoy life again. But then, everything changed in an instant. One minute, I was driving to meet a client, thinking about our trip the next day. The next, there was a blinding flash of light, the screech of tires, and then, nothing. I don't remember much about the crash, just fragments, flashes of sirens, paramedics shouting, and the bright lights above me. When I finally came to, I was in a hospital bed, my entire body aching. The doctor said I'd been lucky. The airbag had saved me from the worst injuries, but I still needed emergency surgery and wasn't going anywhere soon. "Thank goodness you're okay," a nurse said as she adjusted my IV. "You were lucky to survive such a crash." When my parents and Alex finally came into the room, I could see that Mom was holding her favorite purse, one she had specifically bought for our Rome trip. Just seeing it made my stomach sink. I thought they would be concerned about me, but instead I was met with something else entirely. "Don't worry about canceling the trip, honey," Mom said, her voice surprisingly calm. "We've decided we're still going." I blinked in disbelief. "What?" "Your dad and I talked about it," Mom continued, her words almost casual. "We think it's better if we go while you stay here and rest. Alex really needs this trip too. It'll do him good. I was in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. My family was actually planning to go on a vacation while I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from major surgery. And to top it off, they were taking Alex, the one person who hadn't lifted a finger to help anyone in the last year. I lay there, my mouth dry, unable to speak. My family wasn't concerned about me. They were more concerned with having fun in Italy. The decision my family made felt like a gut punch. As I lay there, unable to believe what I was hearing, I watched as my mom calmly adjusted her purse and prepared to leave. I couldn't process it all at once. Alex stood behind them, looking indifferent, as usual. I expected at least a hint of guilt or concern, but instead, I was left speechless. "Don't worry, Mia," Mom continued, as if she were giving me a reassuring piece of advice, not abandoning me. "We'll cancel the trip later when you feel better. But for now, we'll go ahead and take Alex. He really deserves this break." I didn't know how to respond. There I was, lying in a hospital bed, needing care, while my family was planning a vacation I had spent months organizing. Alex, my older brother, who had spent the past year complaining about his life, doing nothing to contribute, and living off me, was the one they were taking with them. Not me, the one who had been sacrificing to help them all along. They didn't even ask how I felt about any of it. Not about the accident. Not about the surgery. It was as if my needs didn't matter. Mom and Dad's voices were already fading as they turned to leave. I felt the world spin, my body aching from the crash, but nothing compared to the hurt that swelled in my chest. They were actually leaving me. After everything I had done for them, after paying for this trip and planning it to give us a break, they were going without me. Once they left, I lay in the bed, staring at the sterile hospital ceiling, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The pain from the accident was nothing compared to the emotional pain I was feeling. I couldn't believe how easily they had abandoned me, how quickly they had forgotten all the sacrifices I had made. All of the bills I had paid, the emotional support I had provided, and the countless hours I had spent helping them, all of that meant nothing. The worst part was that they had walked out of that room with no hesitation, acting like it was perfectly fine to go on vacation while I lay here, barely able to move. I stared at my phone, which was lying next to me on the table. It felt like a lifeline, something that could connect me to the outside world. But in that moment, I didn't want to hear from them. I didn't want their calls or messages, not after what they had just done. But, of course, they didn't let me be. They didn't give me a moment to process or heal. My phone began buzzing incessantly, notifications flooding in from Mom, Dad, and Alex. At first, I didn't even want to look at it, but curiosity got the best of me. I reluctantly picked it up, and the messages started pouring in. "Katie, my sister, was first. You're selfish. How could you cancel the trip like that? We're stuck here with nowhere to stay. Do you even care about us?" Next came Mom, sounding more disappointed than ever. "Mia, I can't believe you're doing this to us. After everything we've been through, this is how you treat your own family." Dad's messages were blunt and short, typical for him. "You need to fix this. Immediately." Then there was Alex, complaining in his usual style. "We're in a terrible hotel. There's no food, no tours, nothing. How could you do this to us? You ruined everything." The more I read, the angrier I became. They were angry at me? After everything they had just done? I couldn't believe it. They hadn't even taken a moment to ask how I was feeling or if I needed anything. Instead, they were more upset about their ruined vacation than my well-being. But their frustration quickly turned into something else: fear. The further I read, the more desperate their messages became. "We don't know how to get home," Mom texted. "The flight home was canceled. What are we supposed to do now?" At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I hit the mute button on my phone and tossed it back on the table, trying to shut out the noise. The flood of texts and calls became a blur, and I felt the heavy weight of their selfishness pressing down on me. The reality of what had happened set in even further. They didn't care about me. They only cared about their own convenience. I sat there, trying to calm myself, to find some peace amidst the chaos. But the anger inside me only grew. I wasn't going to let them continue treating me like this. At some point, the nurse came in and checked my vitals, noticing the sharp increase in my heart rate. She stepped closer, concern evident on her face. Are you all right, Mia? I looked at her, feeling overwhelmed but determined. They left me, I muttered, almost in disbelief. They're on their vacation, and they didn't even care if I was okay. The nurse just nodded, silently understanding, but she had no idea how deep the betrayal felt. I spent the next few days in the hospital, trying to focus on healing. But the constant flood of messages and calls from my family kept my mind spinning. They weren't going to let me rest. They couldn't. They needed me to fix everything. It was exhausting, emotionally and physically. On the 5th day, Dr. Harper came into my room with a serious expression. He placed my phone down on the bedside table and gently spoke. I think you're strong enough to handle this now, Mia. But if you want, we can keep it off a little longer. I took the phone with trembling hands. I hadn't wanted to touch it since the last message from Alex had hit me like a slap in the face. But now, I had no choice. As soon as the screen lit up, the notifications hit me like a tidal wave. Over 150 missed calls, hundreds of text messages, dozens of voicemails. I started scrolling through the messages, watching the tone shift as I read each one. At first, the messages were full of pleading and guilt. Mia, you have to understand. We're family. We can fix this. We're not the bad guys here. Then came the guilt trips. How could you embarrass us like this? You know how much we've done for you. We don't deserve this. By the end of the day, the messages turned downright angry. You can't do this to us. We're stranded. Do you have any idea how much trouble we're in now? And then there was Alex, with his usual dramatic flair. We're stuck in this awful hotel. There are bedbugs. Dad's sleeping on the floor. We're hearing gunshots at night. Why would you do this to your own family? It was clear that their vacation had turned into a nightmare, but I couldn't bring myself to feel bad. How could I? After all the times I'd been left behind or ignored, after everything I had done for them, this was what they chose to do when I needed them most. Mom's messages were equally dramatic. We're eating from food trucks like beggars. We haven't been able to see anything we planned. What kind of daughter are you? This is how you repay us. I couldn't believe what I was reading. They were treating me like the villain for protecting myself, for standing up for my own well-being. And what did they expect? To come into the hospital room, treat me like I didn't matter, and then demand that I fix their mess? I couldn't keep going back and forth in my head anymore. Their actions spoke louder than their words. I put the phone down and tried to breathe. Just as I thought I could get some peace, there was another knock on the door. It was Sophie, from the HR department. She was holding a deck of cards and a bag of cookies, a playful grin on her face. Ready to learn poker? She asked, her voice light and teasing. I looked at Sophie, then at the phone, which was still buzzing with new messages from my family. For the first time in a while, I made a choice. I turned the phone off completely, shutting out the noise and the chaos. Deal me in, I said with a smile, surprising myself. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a little bit of joy. The distraction was exactly what I needed. The cards, the cookies, and the easy banter with Sophie brought some light back into my day. I needed a break from it all. The guilt, the demands, and the weight of family expectations. But my peace didn't last long. It was about an hour later when the door slammed open, and in stormed my parents, looking like a tornado. Mom's face was red with anger, her eyes flashing with fury. How dare you, Mia? She shouted. How dare you do this to us? We're your family. Behind her, Alex dragged in his designer suitcase, looking as smug as ever. I can't believe you. You've ruined everything. How could you cancel our vacation, the one thing we've been looking forward to? Dad stood in the doorway, silent but clearly fuming. The nurse who had been checking my vitals quickly stepped between us. Please, keep your voices down, she said firmly. This is a hospital. We have other patients to consider. But that didn't stop them. Mom started ranting again, but it was Alex who really let loose. Look at her. Alex threw his hands up, motioning around my room. She's lying in a hospital bed, getting 3 meals a day while we suffer. How is this fair? Something inside me snapped. I'd had enough. Maybe it was the painkillers kicking in, or maybe I just hit my breaking point, but I finally found my voice. Suffered? I said, my voice quiet but full of steel. Let's talk about suffering. The room fell silent as I continued, each word hitting harder than the last. For the past year, I've been the one paying for everything. The bills, groceries, your therapy, Alex's laziness. I've been working myself to exhaustion while you've all done nothing. And now, after I nearly died in that accident, you think you can come in here and complain about a ruined vacation? He didn't even ask how I was doing. He didn't care if I was okay. You only cared about your trip, so don't you dare talk to me about suffering. There was a long, heavy silence after I spoke. I could see the flickers of shame on my mother's face, but it quickly turned into defensiveness. She opened her mouth to say something, but I raised my hand to stop her. No, I said firmly, my voice clear and cutting. Not this time. I could feel the anger building in my chest again, the weight of it pressing down on me. I wasn't going to let them gaslight me anymore. They had abandoned me when I needed them the most. And now, they wanted me to fix their mess? It wasn't going to happen. I planned this trip for us, I continued, my voice shaking with frustration. I spent months organizing it, paying for it out of my own pocket. I thought it would be a way for us to take a break from all the stress. But then I got into an accident, had emergency surgery. And what did you do? You just walked away. You didn't even ask if I was okay. You took Alex, who hasn't done a single thing for this family in over a year, on my trip. My trip. I could feel my hands trembling as I gripped the edge of the bed. My eyes didn't leave Mom's face as I spoke, and I could tell that, for the first time, she was starting to feel the weight of her actions. But it didn't last long. You can afford to go to Rome anytime, Mom snapped, her voice laced with irritation. This was our one chance to go. Why are you making this about you? My jaw clenched. This was the final straw. She still didn't get it. She didn't see how much I had given for this family, how much I had sacrificed to keep things together. And then Alex spoke, his words like a dagger to my already wounded heart. Besides, he said, his voice dripping with smugness, you could have been left disabled after the accident. If that had happened, you would have definitely canceled the trip. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad to go while everything was still paid for. The room went completely silent. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. My own brother had used my near-death experience as an excuse to justify their actions. The betrayal hit me harder than the crash itself. I felt my chest tighten as I fought to control my emotions. This wasn't the time to break down. This wasn't the time to let them see how much they had hurt me. But it was hard. So hard. I reached for the call button, my fingers shaking as I pressed it. I couldn't stay in this room with them anymore. I couldn't let them continue to treat me like this. A few moments later, a nurse appeared at the door. Yes, Miss Wilson? She asked, her voice gentle but firm. Please, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I need security. I want them out of my room, and I want them added to the restricted visitors list. I saw my mom's face turn bright red with rage as she stepped toward me. Don't you dare, she shouted. You can't do this to us, Mia. We're your family. But it was too late. The nurse didn't hesitate. She quickly stepped aside as 3 security guards entered the room. This patient is recovering from major surgery, one of the guards said firmly, his tone unyielding. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I watched in silence as they escorted my parents and Alex out of the room. I heard Mom's angry voice echoing down the hall, but I didn't care. Dad was silent as usual, his face red with embarrassment. Alex, ever the drama king, was still protesting as he was led out. It wasn't over. I wasn't done with them, but at that moment I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I had made a decision. I had taken control of my life and my healing. The next day, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I blocked all of their numbers, every single one. I couldn't take the constant pressure, the guilt trips, and the manipulation any longer. I could finally breathe. I could finally focus on myself. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't worried about them. I wasn't focused on their problems. It was time to take care of myself. The next few days passed in a blur. Without my phone, without the constant barrage of messages, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could focus solely on myself. On healing and regaining my strength. The pain from the surgery still lingered, but it was nothing compared to the emotional toll I had been carrying for so long. The hospital staff was incredible. Dr. Harper and the nurses were kind and understanding, making sure I had everything I needed while I recovered. I began physical therapy, slowly gaining mobility, taking one step at a time. And though the progress was slow, it was progress. Each small victory gave me a sense of accomplishment, something I hadn't felt in a long time. But as I focused on my own recovery, something unexpected happened. Despite the chaos from my family, I felt surrounded by kindness from others. My work colleagues began showing up regularly to visit me, people I hadn't expected to care as much as they did. Karine from marketing showed up on the third day with a huge grin, carrying a cup of real coffee from a local cafe. "Contraband," she whispered, as if we were in a secret operation. The next day, Nick from accounting arrived with a stack of magazines and some of the latest office gossip. I found myself laughing with them, something I hadn't done in a long time. It felt good. It felt right. The day after that, Brittany and James from my team stopped by, joking around and keeping me company. The warmth from their presence was a stark contrast to the cold, selfish behavior I had been dealing with from my family. They were bringing light into my otherwise dim days. Then, my cousin Mary, who I hadn't seen in months, showed up with homemade soup. The smell of it was comforting, and her visit was a reminder that there were people in my life who genuinely cared about me, who saw me for who I was, and not just as someone to use. "We've got a schedule worked out," Brittany said, holding up a color-coded chart on her tablet. "Someone from the office will stop by every day. You can't be stuck here all alone. We're not letting you get lonely, Mia." Tears filled my eyes. It was such a simple thing, but in that moment, I realized how little I had been receiving from the people who should have been there for me. My colleagues and friends had shown me more care and concern in just a few days than my family had in months. "I don't deserve this," I said quietly, touched by their kindness. "You didn't have to do this." "Oh, please," James said, waving off my protest. "After all the times you've helped us out, this is nothing." Even my boss, Mr. Ryan, had called the hospital directly. His usual gruff voice softened as he spoke to me. "Don't worry about a thing, Mia. The company's insurance is covering your recovery. You'll get a good payout, and it should help with everything." It was a comforting reassurance. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe things were starting to fall into place, even if everything else around me seemed to be falling apart. By the time I was on my 5th day in the hospital, I had come to a major realization. I needed to stop worrying about the people who had hurt me. I had done more than enough for them, and I had been left behind time and time again. But now, I had a choice. I could choose to heal, to surround myself with people who truly cared, and to stop giving so much to those who wouldn't give back. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was done letting them dictate my happiness. I was done letting their selfishness control me. I was taking back control of my life. The thought of going back home once I was discharged felt bittersweet. There was so much I needed to figure out, but I knew I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't keep giving in to the manipulation, the guilt, and the emotional abandonment from my family. And so, for the first time in a long while, I began to truly focus on me. I wasn't their caretaker anymore. I wasn't their emotional punching bag. I was Mia, and it was time for me to put myself first.